The I-70 killer is an unidentified serial killer who is responsible for the murder of 6 women in the Midwest United States in 1992. All of his victims were working as store clerks at the time, and his nickname comes from the fact that these stores were located just off I-70. His crimes span across Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, and Texas. As with most unidentified and even known serial killers, the I-70 killer is suspected of being responsible for more killings than can be officially connected to him. His victims were all young, brunette, petite women, apart from one male. However, the male is suspected of being mistaken as a woman by the killer, as he had long hair that he wore in a ponytail. The official span of the I-70 killer's crimes are from April 8th, 1992 until May 7th, 1992, which is an extremely short window to carry out 6 separate murders. Along with these killings, he's also suspected of shooting 3 store clerks between 1993 and 1994, which may extend his span to January 15th, 1994. His first victim was 26-year-old Robert Fuldoa, who was the manager of the Payless Shoe Source in Indianapolis. On April 9th, 1992, Robin was shot somewhere between 1:30 and 2 p.m. Sadly, Robin was alone when she was shot and died alone and scared. Due to her being alone, there was no one to identify the man who was responsible for her murder. The I-70's next 2 victims, so victims 2 and 3, both happened in the same store on April 11th, 1992, at the D'Elegance bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas, just a year after the city had been terrorized by the infamous BTK killer. So it must be a pretty scary time for the residents of Wichita, Kansas. Not only do you have the BTK on the loose, you have these shootings that are happening at random. Since there were 2 victims in this attack, Patricia Smith, who was 23, and Patricia Major, who was 32, police have come to the conclusion that the I-70 killer thought that there was actually only one woman inside the store. The I-70 killer preferred to attack women who were alone, so not to leave behind any witnesses, who might be able to identify him or stop him in his tracks. The events of April 11th, 1992 transpired like this. Both of the Patricias stayed behind later than the usual 6 p.m. shop closing time so that a customer could come and collect a purchase. Just after 6 p.m, the I-70 killer showed up to the shop and the women let him in, thinking that he was the customer that they were waiting for. Sadly, Smith and Majors unknowingly opened the door to their murderer. Each woman was shot and left for dead. Shortly after the I-70 killer had murdered Smith and Majors, the actual customer came through the doors and just came completely face to face with him. Surprisingly, the I-70 killer let the man go despite the fact that he had seen his face and was obviously able to identify and report him. So obviously the customer fled the scene and contacted police, and he was able to give a full description which aided police in making a composite sketch. That is the composite sketch that you will see most often used in the I-70 case appeals. The 4th and only male victim of the I-70 killer was 40-year-old Michael McCown from Terre Haute, Indiana. McCown was shot when he was working at his mother's ceramics store, which was under the name of Sylvia's Ceramics. This leads police to think that the attack on the specific store wasn't just given by chance, because the store is under a female name. Police also think McCown was targeted because he wore his hair in a ponytail. McCown was knelt down, stocking shelves at the time of his murder, and he was shot in the back from the shop door, also leading police to think that the I-70 killer had mistaken him for a woman. It seems extremely out of his MO that the killer would target a man after killing 3 women, and also the fact that he allowed the man from the bridal shop to go free, so I believe that he probably thought McCown was a woman. The fact that he killed 3 women and allowed the man from the bridal shop to go free, despite being face to face with him, speaks volumes to the issues that he obviously had with women. It seems that he had an issue with young women who most likely either resembled his mother, or a girlfriend, or someone in his life, a close female companion in his life, and his victims became an extension of this woman, so maybe he could build up to killing his intended target, or that in his mind he was killing that person over and over again. Since we don't actually know the identity of the I-70 killer, it's impossible for us to figure out what his trigger was. Most serial killers have ideas and tendencies in their head, but then it takes traumatic events for them to spiral out of control and act upon these urges. Those triggers could be something like a family member dying, like with Ed Gein when his mother died, or losing their job. 24-year-old Nancy Kitzmiller was working alone at Boot Village in St. Charles, Missouri, on May 4th, 1992. She was fatally shot as she opened up the shop at 12 p.m. She wasn't found until 2:30 p.m. when customers came across her dead body still in the doorway to the store. The killer's final confirmed victim was 37-year-old Sarah Mae Blessing on May 7th, 1992 in Raytown, Missouri, which is around 215 miles away from where Nancy Kitzmiller was murdered. If you take the I-70 route, the journey is around 3 hours and 22 minutes non-stop. Blessing was the owner of a gift shop called Store of Many Colours, where she would ultimately end up being murdered. On May 7th, 1992, the I-70 killer entered the store during daylight hours, shot Blessing once, then left the store. The owner of the video shop next door actually saw the killer enter and leave, as well as hearing the gunshot that ended Blessing's life. The owner at the video store ran across to Blessing's shop to see what had happened, and that's where he found her body on the floor. He called the police, but he was too late in getting to the scene to save Blessing or to catch her killer. It is also reported that a grocery store worker saw the I-70 killer. It's unsure whether he was in the store or whether he was just passing by. The witness said that they saw him running up a hill that led to the I-70, plus possibly indicating that he had a car nearby or that he was planning on hitchhiking. In 1993 and 1994, police believe that the I-70 killer may have struck again in Texas. 51-year-old Mary Ann Glasscock and 22-year-old Amy Vess were both killed on September 25th, 1993 and November 1st, 1993 respectively. Glasscock was shot at the Fort Worth Emporium Antique Store, whilst Vess was killed whilst working in a dancewear shop in Arlington, Texas. The I-70 runs through Utah, Colorado, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania before ending in Maryland, which spans a total of 2,151 miles. So, by that sort of estimation, it's extremely possible that the killer has victims in all of these locations. As far as I can find, the closest that the I-70 comes to Texas is Kansas, so it is possible that the killer took a detour from the I-70 to find new victims because he knew that the heat was on him. Both of these killers have the same MO, so attacking brunette women in shops who were alone, and both killers used a .22 caliber handgun. Upon ballistic testing, it was found that the gun used for the I-70 murders and the murders in Texas was not the same, which meant police could not officially connect the two events, although most do think that the I-70 killer was responsible. And when I say they were not the same, it means they're not the same, possibly same make or model. They don't have the same stamping, if you've ever seen forensic ballistic analysis, but they were both .22 calibers, which is important. During the attacks in Texas in 1993 and 1994, the killer, whoever he was, did leave behind a living victim, something that he had not done before. Vicky Webb, who was 35, was shot on January 15th, 1994, whilst working at the Alternative Gift Shop in Houston, Texas. Webb testified that she spoke to the killer before he shot her in the back of the head. Luckily, the bullet didn't hit her head and instead hit part of her vertebrae. The killer then attempted to shoot her again, but his gun misfired. Following his gun jamming, the killer fled the scene, assuming that Webb was already dead. All of the murders weren't linked until the murder of Nancy Kitzmiller, when a detective in St. Charles, Missouri made the connection between the .22 caliber handgun and the victimology, so petite, brunette, long hair. None of the murders had signs of sexual assault, and robbery seemed to sort of be an afterthought to the I-70 killer rather than the main motive. All of the victims, apart from the murders in Wichita Falls, were committed against women who were working alone in their shops. The robbery motive is also thought to be unlikely since the killer targeted small independent businesses when larger businesses with much more money were in the area. People speculate that based on eyewitness accounts, the gun used was either, now I apologise for my pronunciation of these, an Intratec Scorpion pistol or an Irma Work ET-22 pistol. Unfortunately, ballistic testing hasn't allowed them to rule out any other type of .22 caliber pistol, so the pool of weapons they could possibly be working with is huge. They did, however, manage to find out that the bullets used were .22 caliber CCI copper clad lead bullets and had been polished with jeweler's rouge. The type of polish could be indicative of the I-70's occupation, or at least give police an insight into his personal life and surroundings. Thanks to the bravery of eyewitnesses and the surviving victim, police were able to make 2 composite sketches of the I-70 killer, and they were also able to provide a basic description of the killer. The I-70 killer is described as a white man who may be in his 20s or 30s, around 5'7" to 5'9", weighing between 140 to 160 pounds, slim to thin build, and has lazy eyelids and sandy or strawberry blonde hair. So obviously these descriptions were made in 1992, so it's very possible that he has since changed his sort of physical identity and physical characteristics. The killer will have aged, so now will be around 40 to 50 years old, and it's possible that his hair is now greying. He could have also gained or lost weight in an effort to disguise his identity from authorities. He could have also dyed his hair and may have gone even as far as getting plastic surgery to alter his face. While the possibility of plastic surgery may seem drastic, it has been noted that in many cases people will do this, especially mafia bosses or people involved with serious organised crime that will get their whole face reshaped. Sadly, there have been no real updates in the case since 1994, which has led this case to become cold. Police have never publicly identified any suspects, which leads people to believe that even the police are at a dead end. The lack of forensic evidence makes it much harder for this case to be solved. The killer did not sexually assault his victims before or after murdering them, which means the likelihood of DNA evidence left behind is slim. This case may be solvable if the right person comes forward with information. If you have any information that will bring the I-70 to justice, please contact the relevant state's department, where you can give an anonymous tip. Now, the states you can contact are Indiana, Missouri, Kansas, or Texas, or I believe that you may be able to submit a tip to the FBI, or if you're in the US and you have sort of a version of Crime Stoppers, please just submit your tip. You can stay anonymous, you don't have to give your name. But I do believe personally that this case will be solved by just the right person with the right information coming forward. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Thank you again for tuning in. We're getting very close to 150 subscribers, which is super exciting considering it was only like a month ago that I hit 100, so thank you so much. And remember friends, stay safe and stay spooky.